We know that the extreme heat can be a killer. And recent trends have shown that more and more people are struggling, suffering, and even dying from extreme heat events all over the world, and especially here in the Valley. Joining us right now, our news partner, our TV partner, ABC 15, and an amazing reporter there, Nicole Grigg, who has been doing a really, really awesome story digging into these heat deaths in the Valley. And first off, Nicole, my first question for you is the problem getting better or worse?
Well, I think just by the numbers, I mean, we had 37 fewer deaths in Maricopa County from 2024 to 2023. So 37 fewer deaths. I mean, that's not a lot of deaths, and a lot of people are dying. In Arizona, we have more than 900 people dying. That's a lot of people.
Wow.
So in your story, you talk about a 72-year-old Arizona man fell on the sidewalk last year, and unfortunately, the hot surface burned 16% of his body.
Oof.
He died.
Yeah.
And they didn't count that as a hot death. If that's not a heat death, I should say. If that's not a heat death, what is a heat death?
Good point.
Yeah, cause of death, complications of thermal injuries. And where on the medical examiner report, it says how injury occurred, it said prolonged exposure to elevated environmental temperature on a hot surface.
Well,
So
come
that was
on.
the NE report.
So are we talking about how they're going to word certain deaths? Because it's like, okay, I think the 72-year-old guy probably fell down on the sidewalk because it was hot, and then he couldn't get back up, burned himself.
And died of the heat. Yeah.
And that killed him. And that's because why?
Right.
That's the heat. That's a heat death. So what does like the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office, what's their definition? How is that not a definition of a heat death? What's their definition?
Well, the county, Maricopa County, says that their methodology in counting heat deaths has remained consistent. But we don't really know what their methodology is. I've asked several times. But what I can tell you is that experts and advocates say when it comes to the medical examiner, the forensic pathologist, it's really subjective because it ends up being, their opinion on if they believe it was a heat death or not.
So is it fair to say, and again, with your reporting, Nicole Grigg from ABC 15, it's not as easy as I would say. There appears to be very few obvious ones. Everything has contributing factors, and sometimes these contributing factors are listed as the cause of death as opposed to the heat.
Correct. I mean, it is hard to count heat deaths, right? Whether someone has cardiovascular disease, right? A lot of people over a certain age, you're going to have cardiovascular disease. Well, that makes you escalated, right? That makes your risk even higher. So we saw some deaths where a woman, for example, she was evicted from her apartment. She was in her 70s, and she died within 2 weeks after being evicted. The cause of death was cardiovascular disease, and I think the secondary cause was from diabetes. So, it's just raising a lot of questions on, are we maybe dismissing it too quickly?
ABC 15 reporter Nicole Grigg is joining us. She's got an incredible investigation. Are some of these people who are dying of heat uncounted? Because let's go to the 70-year-old woman who got evicted and was out in the heat for 2 weeks. I know 1 + 1 is 2. So I'm thinking that she died of the heat. If they don't count that as a death, we can't put more resources into trying to save people out there. I mean,
if you don't know what the real number is, how do you attack it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, across the country, heat deaths are grossly undercounted, right? Like there's not a standard way to track them. There's not a standardized way to count them. I mean, I can tell you each county across Arizona does it differently.
Oh, wow.
So if we don't have a standardized way, how can we really know if we are all counting the heat dust?
Nicole, is there an argument that we should change the definition to heat contributed to the death, or something that takes into account all these other extenuating factors, so at least we understand the impact heat is having?
Well, that's why I also use the word heat related a lot, because, it is a lot of times a contributory factor, right? Whether you have, like I said, the cardiovascular disease, or maybe you did have drugs in your system, but was it enough drugs to kill you? Or did heat play a factor? And that's, again, why it comes down to a medical examiner's opinion.
Is our heat death problem much bigger than Maricopa County is admitting to? We're talking to ABC 15 investigative reporter Nicole Grigg. Says, I would say, like, if it's worse than what is being reported, or it's the numbers are bigger, that would tell me we need to invest more in cooling centers to save more people. And so if the numbers are, like, I don't know if they're trying to keep the numbers down, but if they're trying to keep the numbers down, and you've got, somebody who clearly has died of heat, and they're going to just put it in another box, and they're going to say, this is how that person died. I guess that's my...
I was going to say, what it reminds me of? Some of the COVID discussions I was thinking that.
No.
Okay. Yeah, when you described it,
did you die of cancer, or did you die of COVID?
Right.
Or did you die of pneumonia, or did you die of COVID? Who are the people who are mostly passing away? Is it all? It's not always homeless people, right?
Yeah, it's not always homeless. It is not always people who are on drugs. I know people say that a lot. I've done a series of investigations into people dying indoors. That was my big piece, my big focus, the past few months as well. I mean, your grandma, your grandpa, and people are dying indoors because they're turning off their AC, and people don't talk about that. We need more resources for that as well. So this is a very complex issue. You talked about cooling centers. Well, we also found cooling centers closing at 4:00 about a year and a half ago. So if they're closing before the hottest part of the day,
right,
it just shows like we need to be looking at this and relying on more than just, a cool space. It's very complex, this issue.
Nicole, sincerely appreciate your time and being gracious with us. Is there going to be more tonight on the news? Can we watch more on this?
Yeah, so we have a follow tonight on ABC 15 at 6. Our full investigation on abc15.com. It's about 5 minutes, but I think it's really eye-opening. And yes, there are more stories coming. I want to know what our leaders have to think. We have politicians who have said, that what they're doing is working. But if we don't know the true number, then there's a lot of questions.
Hey, Nicole, what would you ask Governor Hobbs? We're going to have her on Thursday. Ooh. What do you think we should ask her?
Well, I think it's important, what is her reaction, that the death numbers might be much higher? And do we need to maybe look across the state at, having a standardized way so every county reports them? And twofold, should we be going back and reviewing deaths, like a review death panel, right? We do it for maternal deaths in states across the country. So do we need to go back and have a team that's reviewing these medical examiners' opinions to see if we're missing heat deaths?
I got it.
Great point.
I wrote it down. We will ask her on Thursday, 5:30.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you.
That's Nicole Grigg, ABC 15 reporter. And again, more on that story tonight on ABC 15 at 6.
Thanks for watching Outspoken with Bruce and Gaydos. Tap to watch more from KTAR News and click the button in the middle to subscribe.